I had to do my role, someone else had to do theirs. Did it go where you needed it to go? Yes, move on. Don't dwell on something that isn't there. Everyone deals with things differently. Just having that mindset that we can get up tomorrow and go. I think leadership is...
Hello and welcome to Get a Shift On, podcast all about career change and career transition. This week, I'm absolutely delighted to welcome Steeno. Steeno is a former rugby player and still does play, I am sure. Steeno played for the Chiefs, but actually started all the way back in Ulster as a young man. He's had an awesome career. I've had the pleasure of watching him play and lift various trophies. Steeno, welcome along to the podcast.
Thanks, David. Thanks for having me. It's nice to be here. Playing still, not so much, but maybe kick the odd ball the odd time, but that's about it.
I'm sure you kick it around with your sons, as you said.
Yeah, no, well, I'm trying to keep up with them. So they're trying to teach me how to do things now. Yeah, it's like I've never played the game.
Yeah, my son knows everything about everything, so I fully appreciate that one with you. Steeno is just back as well from the Women's Rugby World Cup, where he worked with the Irish women. So I want to hear a bit about that at some point in the chat. But can you just start at the very beginning? When did you start playing rugby and what has happened since to get you to where you are today?
Yeah, so from my rugby journey, I was actually from a soccer background. So my father was very much involved with Armagh City Football Club. And they would have been at the time, they were fighting to get into the Premiership in Northern Ireland, so not quite the standard that people will probably know of in Premiership football in England. But yeah, no, that's my background. I was very much wanting to play football whenever I was a kid. And I got asked to go along with my primary school friends to the local club, Armagh Rugby Club. And I remember going along and just wanting to have a bit of fun, not having a clue about the game. I remember going in for the first time and being told, well, asked, what position do you play? Do you play in the forwards or the backs? And I was like, well, I'm a soccer player. I'm up front, I score goals, so I must be a forward. They looked at me very quickly and went, no, you definitely not in the forwards, and then you're in the backs. It took me a bit of time to kind of work out, that's a good thing. And I could actually score goals from the back, but in a different way. But yeah, that's kind of where it was. I played a lot of team sports as a kid. It was football, rugby, a bit of cricket in there. Hockey was another one. Loads of different sports. Really enjoyed that sort of time. And then I went to the Royal School Armagh, and where it was very much rugby on a Saturday. If you weren't doing rugby on a Saturday, it was Saturday detention. So I'd rather go and play rugby than be sitting doing work. So yeah, that's kind of where it was. It was more in around playing rugby in your school. You kind of developed that over the years. And then you kind of got into like schoolboy rugby in Northern Ireland. It's a little bit tribal. It's all about getting ready for the school's cup. And yes, you spend about 5-6 years with your best friends, and then you probably get 2 or 3 shots at potentially winning the school's cup in the first 15. So that's kind of under 18s level. So yeah, I was very fortunate to be involved with the team for 3 years in there. And then it was, you kind of get picked up or you get seen where you get into representative stuff. So Ulster Rugby, Ulster Schoolboy Rugby, or Schoolboy Rugby. So I was very fortunate to get kind of seen in those areas, get involved with it from that point of view, and getting into like Ulster 21s, Irish 21s. Got to go to a couple of World Cups with Ireland. Got to captain Ireland in one of them. So that's kind of where that rugby journey was. Got myself involved in around Ulster rugby for a couple of seasons, but never could really make the breakthrough. I seemed to always be at the wrong place at the wrong time. There was David Humphreys just wouldn't retire. I mean, he kept playing. He looked a great player for Irish rugby, great player for Ulster rugby, but it just wasn't my time. And yeah, the opportunity came that I was kind of sat down by Saracens coach, the now Saracens coach, Mark McCall, and he'd actually got me my first cap for Ireland under 21s, but he did say he was the Ulster coach at the time, and he said, look, I don't think there's an opportunity here for you. It's either go get a real job or try something different. And try something different I did. I went to Rotherham, got myself across to Rotherham of all places. There's a coach called Andre Bester who had coached over in Ireland, a South African fella, and he was a coach at Rotherham, and he said, look, if you want to come across, we can get you into play over here, but you're going to have to work during the day. So I went into schools. I was working in the community. I'd go into schools, work, coach in schools, read to kids. give you a bit of a grounding, but real bit of a lesson for a young fella leaving Northern Ireland to go across to England and play in what was the National One then. It wasn't even the Championship. Yeah, so the year there, and then ended up down in Penzance. I didn't get the chance to go home. I was hoping that Ireland would come or Ulster would come when David Humphries retired. It didn't come. Yeah, so went and got a full-time contract with Pirates down there. It was a difficult year. That was the year my father passed away. Found out yeah, it was a difficult year, but then that's whenever Exeter Chiefs seen me. Yeah, that's it in a nutshell, how I got myself to Exeter Chiefs, really.
And then obviously career exploded once you joined Chiefs, because not long after that, they went on to win the Premiership. Is that right?
Yeah, so when I first joined, I did a year in the National One. So again, it hadn't changed, but then they changed it to the Championship in my second year at Chiefs. So by this stage, I'm 25, relatively old in terms of what would be a rugby player now. I'm probably thinking about whether I'm going to do this or not. And it was my second year at Chiefs that the Championship was designed, and that was the year that we won promotion and got promoted up into the Prem in 2010. And that's when I was 26, actually, whenever I got my first game for Exeter in the Premiership. So in terms of now, if you look at 18, 19, 20-year-olds who are all playing Premiership rugby on a regular basis, I didn't get my first game until I was 26, which probably, when I look back on it now, maybe stood me in good stead, because it probably gave me a grounding. Well, it definitely gave me a grounding and an appreciation for what I was in, because that was all I ever wanted to do, was play at the highest level they possibly could. Obviously, I wanted to play international rugby, but at that stage, it was about playing Premiership rugby, because I'd been in England there by that stage 4 years, and it was the goal. And to play in it, then I was relatively new. I was still learning the game. I was 26. Whereas players now are probably looking at it going, if you're 26, you should be like a veteran and you should be, so well developed. But like, it was just the journey that I went on. But it probably meant that I became quite robust. So I was quite used to training all the time, quite used to what I knew my body could do. I probably spent about 6-7 years building towards it. And in terms of injuries, I was always very lucky that I never really had any big injuries over the course of my career. And it probably meant that I could play right up until I was 36, which is what I was when I retired. Yeah, interesting that it took me to 26 years of age to finally play a Prem game.
Yeah, that's quite interesting, isn't it, when you think of it like that, because the Premiership was so new. And now, obviously, as you say, all the young lads coming through have a completely different expectation, I guess, as well, of what they're going to do. And you talk about retiring at 36. Do you think now players are retiring earlier than that because they start earlier, or are they so fit? I look at some of the guys and it is incredible, the work rate, the robustness, as you've said, of those guys. Do they retire earlier, or do they just keep going?
To be honest, everyone's different. So the position you play as well is going to be a big factor. I was with Ian Whitten literally the other day, who is still playing. So anyone who knows Ian Whitten's still playing for fun. I'm sitting there going, you're a madman. Ian's about 38, but he's playing, and he was man of the match actually at the weekend, from what I gathered. Yeah, like, everyone's different. So the position you play, the game is different. I would say even 2 years after I retired, the game changed. Everyone's bigger. Everyone's more physical. It's about speed. It's about collisions. It's about, I think the way the game has developed as well means that it's much more combative. And I think, again, when I was playing, I was learning the game differently. So I learned it on the way up. So some players now, so if you look at a 19, 20-year-old, might get thrown in at the deep end very, very fast. And some of them are actually learning it on the hoof. So as an example, if I look at Exeter Chiefs, an example, like what happened with them last year, a lot of those young fellas were learning the game in the heat of the moment. Whereas if I look at my development and look at Chiefs development, when I was coming through, we had the group that we had that got promotion had 2 years together learning how each other worked, knew what way the team would work, knew what our strengths, weaknesses were. So when we actually finally came into the Premiership, we probably knew what was going to work for us, and we were very good at a certain thing. Now, we had a lot to learn. We had a lot to get better at. And over the course of, thankfully, we weren't in a position where we were under pressure to have to get results the same way I would say now, with the expectations for young fellas. But I could go back to your point around what the way the game is. I do think it's just the fast pace of it, the way it is now, games come thick and fast. We would have traditionally went for about 5, 6 games and then you would get a couple of weeks break. I know breaks are kind of built in there now, but the way the game is now, it is just a different game now.
And I guess the evolution of rugby as a whole has been incredible. I came to rugby, I guess, probably in the 90s is when I was really kind of first aware of the professional game. Early World Cups, early on, I guess. And to see then compare the chaps that were playing then compared to the elite sportsmen that actually play today is just an incredible journey. And you must really recognise that as well. And we were talking before we started about the women's team. You've obviously been there doing some kicking with the Irish women. That game has come on and just an incredible pace as well. How is that affecting the way that the players play, both in the men and the women's game? But how do you think that will evolve the sport over the next few years?
Well, I think it's just an understanding, it's a learning piece. From a women's point of view, like I've been involved now with the women, well, the Irish women, that is, for a year. And the development in a year is incredible. Like simple things, because it's a new thing in the women's game. It's the professionalism is very new, especially in Irish rugby. And you can see that the speed at which they pick things up, they're so enthusiastic. There's no, if it's pouring with rain, they are out there, they're loving it. I can tell you now in the men's game, the pro game, if it's pouring with rain, some days it's a little bit harder to get people out, as you can imagine. But the enthusiasm around the game, especially the women's game, is incredible. And it's a good game to watch because, it's maybe not, the collisions aren't first and foremost as big as the men's game. So the ball and play time is can be a lot longer. And the skill level is getting better all the time. And, there's high scoring games in there as well. And I think it's, from an entertainment point of view, it's quite a good game to watch. And again, in the men's game, it's a little bit more, especially now with the physicality of it. It's, again, keeping guys fit is difficult. I actually think the way the game's going too, the tactics around it, being clever in around when to pull the trigger on certain things, is really important. But that's the difference probably with the men's game and the women's game at the minute, is when you get opportunities in the men's game, you've got to try to take them. In the women's game at the minute, because because they're still developing, there's opportunities, and that's why it's probably a bit high scoring as well. So from both perspectives, it's good for the game of rugby. I think the way rugby's going at the minute. Big thing too is people actually watching the games and getting behind it. It's a big thing I've noticed, that in this day and age, everybody wants something fast. And highlights is exactly what they are. They're highlights. But how many people are actually sitting watching the game from minute 1 to the 80th minute? I know in my day when I was growing up, and it's funny when you say my day, but when you're watching it, we didn't have the pause button. So we didn't have the fast forward. We didn't have the record. So it was either you watched it or you didn't see it. So I think even nowadays, just for kids especially, to sit down and learn the game, it's a really important piece to actually sit and watch and see how it goes and pick up different things, momentum shifts and loads of things.
And actually, that's really interesting, because I think across the board there, you're talking from your son's play, my son plays rugby, but right up to the professional game, being able to kind of press pause, rewind, watch a play, watch a set piece, what works, what didn't work, must have changed the game enormously from, like you say, back in our day, your day, when you just kind of went with it. And I guess there was probably a whiteboard with pen marks of people to move, whereas now you can actually watch it, and the technology that comes with that. And I know something that Clive Woodward obviously talked about with the 2003 World Cup, and I guess that was really the start of starting to measure and look at the different performance of players and the teams as a whole. And that must be quite exciting from a coaching point of view, to be able to have those sort of technologies to hand.
Yeah, it's exciting from a technology, but 100%. I actually think it can be a hindrance as well, because you can actually overanalyze everything. So if I was to watch one phase of play and I hit pause, there's about 6 or 7 options, but you can't do that in the game. From as much as for me, it's about, especially in rugby, the amount of complexities in it and the positions that certain people play. Everyone has their own role to play in a team. Like I don't throw into the line out, so I don't need to worry about how that works. my role is to make a team tick as a number 10. So it's on making sure that everyone's emotionally in the right place. They know what they're looking to do. I'm not, my winger needs to know that if he's in this position, he's going to get the ball and he might have to step off left and right foot. So there's so many complexities around the differences around it. I suppose that's the good thing around technology, where you can actually kind of go, right, these are different areas, but understanding how a game works and the feeling and the momentum, like no matter how many times I watch it on a screen, I can't feel what it feels like to be in the middle of the game. I can't feel like there's a lot of times in games where forwards might feel that they're on top in a scrum. I can't feel that. As a coach, I need to rely on my team to tell me that. So if they're kicking to the corner, that's because they feel they have the momentum to do it. I can't tell you the amount of times I've stood on the pitch and people are looking at me going, why is he not taking points? It's because my forward pack have looked at me and said, we've got this. It's a trust thing in around your group. And I think it's understanding that's the beauty of our game. Our game is literally, there is so many moments in each thing, and I can't prepare for it on a Tuesday when I'm playing on a Saturday. I can definitely get a plan together, but after 5 minutes, my plan can be completely different. And I think it's about building people to be confident and understanding that in a game scenario is a massive thing.
I really appreciate that, actually. And I think that makes a lot of sense. I've talked about it with business plans. I have a real dislike to some extent of business plans, because you plan and you plan and you plan, and then you spend so long planning that you don't actually commit to doing anything. By the time you commit to doing something, it's all changed. And if you're so set on that plan, the second it deviates, then you really struggle to move forward and I think readapt or adapt to what needs to happen next. So I completely get that. As you were talking there, what really is quite funny is I'm thinking of the times I've sat in the stands at Chiefs or actually any other rugby game and shouted, I won't say abuse, but, expletives of, why are you doing that? Why are you taking the points? Why are you not kicking for the corner? And I do it at the TV. My kids are always like, Dad, you shout so much when you watch rugby. But it's interesting because, to your point, if you're not in it, you're not feeling it, then there's no way that anyone looking in can really feel and understand why you're making that move in the heat of the moment.
Yeah, no, it's like anything. Like it's funny, you go to business plans. It's like how many people plan for COVID?
Yeah, right, absolutely.
You do that. So there's something, and then people had to adapt. You had to adapt on the hoof. Everybody did. So it's doable. My whole thing is creating. I always think with rugby players, you can become very robotic in what you do. You can literally go. I could literally again go. I'm in my 22. I do this, done. I do the next thing. Da 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 da. But what if they start? This is the other way to look at it. If my plan is to catch the ball and kick it off the field, but actually, if they stand and put 5 people in the backfield, well, that's completely crazy to do that, or I'm playing a big heavy pack. Traditionally, we would play Saracens or something like that. Don't kick the ball off the field against them because they want lineouts all the time. Yeah. So you kind of have to adapt as you go. But then you have to take into account that weather conditions could change. It might get a yellow card, might get a red card. They might go 14 points down. So that's the beauty of the game. Again, you can look at it from a business point of view. And when I look at what we did with the standoff, we had a clear plan of what we thought was going to work. We thought that people were interested in coming in, having a fire in the corner, a little guy playing a fiddle in the corner on a Sunday afternoon. Very quickly, you found out that was not what people were after. And you have to adapt to what works. And it's being open to doing that on a daily basis. Even now, me coming home, something like I'm still very much finding my feet in Northern Ireland, which is great because I actually feel every day could be something different. There's some dark days. There's definitely is. There's some fun days. There's days where you feel you've accomplished, but the next day is going to be different. And it's quite a hard way to live, but when I'm a man who's used to your routine for 20 years, being told what to wear, where to be, timings, everything, still learning that, but it's been good.
I think it's interesting is that when you come out of that rigid routine, be it a career in sport like you've had, or any other job where you've kind of lived a life that is so structured, and then suddenly you come out of it and you just all look, it's so hard to knuckle down, concentrate on what you're doing. But do you think the discipline you've had from being an elite sportsman has helped push that forward? I'm not saying you don't have dark days, and trouble, concentrating. But do you think it's helped having the background that you've had?
Yeah, no, I do. I definitely do. Especially, everyone's journey's different. So I wanted to play for Ulster. I wanted to play for Ireland. 100% in my plan, it was never to be an Exeter. It never was. It just, when you say that out loud, where I sit here now, what we'd have achieved and been part of it, I never knew. I'd never heard of Exeter. It was that simple. But again, that goes back to being able to adapt. And I, again, had a different type of journey. I was told I wasn't good enough by certain things at certain areas of the game or whatever it may be. And I had to take a risk. I had to go across, and again, not knowing, didn't know the area, didn't know Cornish Paris, didn't know Rotherham, didn't know anything. And yeah, to be then part of a club at Chiefs, as an example, an area we fell in love with. But again, you could see there was a building. There's the thing with Exeter. It always felt it was getting better. And I never wanted to be I never wanted to not be part of it. Once I was in, I was in. I was in completely. I had opportunities to leave, of course, numerous times. And there were better deals as well, of course. But again, it didn't suit my character. I wanted to be part of it. I didn't want to look in from the outside and see, they've won the Premiership the first time and I wasn't part of that. Wouldn't have sit well with me. So I suppose going back to it, it's like just it does set you up for it. Like, you get used to losing, but then having a chip in your shoulder, I always had a bit of a chip in my shoulder. I was always trying to prove people wrong. People used to tell me I couldn't tackle, couldn't defend. So I went and I made more tackles in a week than anyone else at the club, to which point where we used to hand out Mars bars to whoever made the biggest hit in the game. And I was quite very, very happy that I was up there most weeks with Luke Cowan-Dickie trying to get it. And it's still one of the coolest things when Luke Cowan-Dickie, who's one of the best defenders in the world rugby, was coming up to me and saying, I get such a buzz out of you making big tackles. I was like, well, if Luke Cowan-Dickie's happy, then I'll be happy with that. And I was 34, 35. Probably should have done that 10 years earlier.
High praise indeed from Luke.
Yeah.
That's fascinating. I think it's so interesting to hear that take on it. And it must be hard when you start as a youngster. You want to play for Ireland, you want to play for Ulster, you have all of that. And then you have to change because it's just not working out. But what a rise to be with Chiefs as they grew and work towards that Premiership. And you mentioned earlier about, I think you said about Irish football, Gaelic football being tribal and schools in Northern Ireland being so tribal. Did you feel part of the tribe at Chiefs? And how important do you think that is?
100%. Massive. The other good thing around when I joined the Chiefs was it still had that, I don't want to say amateur feeling because that's the wrong thing, because it wasn't amateur when I arrived. But it was like, game would end on a Saturday. It was upstairs, put your number ones on, upstairs into the bar, have a drink. It's like playing, if I'd have went to Topsham or if I'd have went to any of those sort of clubs, that's what happens. You play your match on a Saturday and away you go. It's a little bit different here because there's 4 provinces. So it's kind of, the difference between here is Exeter Chiefs. So Ulster Rugby and teams over here, if I give you an example, they are provinces, so you get to pick to play for them. Whereas if I give you an example, a club team over here, which is like a Dungannon Rugby Club as an example, or Armagh Rugby Club, they could never, ever become Ulster. So they could never go up. They would only play at a certain level. Whereas Chiefs or Topsham as an example, if I give Topsham, they could become Exeter Chiefs. I'm not saying they will, but they have the ability to do that if you get the right investment and away they go. And that's one of the cool things about whenever I was there at Chiefs. So it all felt like people had done a lot of work to get there. I came in 2 years before we got promotion. So I kind of came in at a nice time when it was kind of simmering. The stadium was there. Everything was in place. It was just a matter of, right, when's this going to happen? And I was very lucky to be there when it happened, and then being able to go into the bar after the games, like meet people, talk to people. And then people then became they were supporting me. They were supporting our team because they knew us. And I think that's a big thing with sport nowadays, making people accessible to the players and the players making themselves accessible. As much as the playing sport, you're very, very lucky. Elite sport, pro sport, it's a dream come true. But people are going to support you. Go and be friendly with them. Do you know what I mean? It's like, I'll go and have a beer after you. Whether I win or lose, I'm still going to go upstairs. It's my rugby club. I'm putting the number ones on. I'm going upstairs. I'm meeting people. And that actually, for me, I noticed that's probably why we were in the community, as in Exeter as an example, like we were probably accepted really well, and it made it more enjoyable that I could literally go, like I got to take the field, but I was still supporting the team. Do you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it was a little bit like that.
I think it's interesting because you said about when you joined back being an amateur field. And I think I understand what you mean by that. But I think it's more than that. I think it is that community. And I think that's something that rugby does particularly well. Exeter is clearly my team, and I've been fortunate enough to go lots. I've been up in the members' bar, had drinks with players. And I think the way that players conduct themselves and that ability to just be one part of that tribe is amazing. And I've taken my son up there, and having players spend the time signing balls, talking to fans, for me is just so incredible because it just brings everybody closer together. And as such, I think that builds the trust and the confidence and the team spirit that makes those local teams so important on whatever level, national, international, that they are. And I think that's hats off to all the players for doing that because it really does make a big difference to the supporters. What was it like to lift the Premiership trophy?
Yeah, pretty good. Like, yeah. Look, I think you got to go back. Everyone's very quick to go to that one because that's the obvious one. The championship trophy, winning it was pretty big because we weren't meant to do that. Everyone had pretty much Bristol were going to win. Bristol are better. Bristol have come from the Premiership. We knew we were going to do it because we'd set up the season to do it. So we'd done a pre-season around Christmas when nobody knew about. Right in the middle, we were doing 4 weight sessions a week. I remember losing at Sandy Park to Bristol, and everyone went, and then we lost to Plymouth the next week, and everyone going, the wheels have come off. Nothing's going to happen here. This is all bad. What nobody knew was we were doing 4 weight sessions a week and 4 training sessions a week, and we were not prepping for games because we were preparing for when it actually mattered, which was the end of the season. So there was a quiet confidence amongst the group, and it goes back to that chip on the shoulder, proving people wrong. So we knew that we had a good group there, but to go to win the Premiership again was a building phase. Like when we go to the Premiership, we're not going to win the Premiership this year, of course not. We're going to consolidate. We're going to learn. We're going to be better. We're going to take a couple of years to experience Europe, experience all the things that come with it, and make sure that we build to the right time to achieve it. We brought some fellas in. Dean Munn was one who came in. Now, he wasn't there for whenever we won it, but bringing players in that had a winning mentality, a bit of a Jeff Parling coming in, and there was just a snowball of momentum. I kind of felt like 7 years it took us to win it, but we had to go in a final and lose it, the year before. So yeah, like to lift it and win it in the fashion that we did. For me, from a personal point of view, I get a lot of plaudits because I kicked the goal, but I didn't put my head in the scrum. I didn't win the penalties. That was someone else's job to do that. My job was to kick it over the bar. So that's the way I kind of look at it. That I had to do my role, someone else had to do theirs, and that's why I still think it's one of the best. We went in such a good run that year. I think we had like 18 wins in a row or something after such a bad start to the season. That was a complete team unit, that squad unit that done that. That was one of the best achievements as a group, as a club, and it was nice to play a small part in it.
And I think it's to hear you say that speaks volumes about you as an individual and rugby players, I think, as a whole, and that absolute dedication to the team and the fact that it really is a team game with people from the front, backs, the coaching staff, everyone is involved. And I just love that. I think it's a really good feeling to have. From the highs to the lows, you talked earlier about you can't plan when someone gets a yellow card or a red card. How does that affect a team? Do you kind of prepare? Say, right, if someone gets a yellow or a red, this is what we're going to do? Or is it sometimes just completely out of the blue and it throws everything?
No, well, you would talk about scenario basis. There's certain positions you can cover. Certain positions are harder than others. 9 is a very difficult position for a yellow card. Because, for instance, I know whenever Nick White got a yellow card, we were playing Saracens and I was playing 10, and I was asked to go play 9. I didn't even know how to put the ball in scrum. Apparently I did it wrong. I actually put it down straight. To which point, even Schalk Brits, who was the hooker for Saracens, laughed at me and said, "No, Gareth, just put it under your hooker's feet." I was like, quite sorry. Yeah. Even the referee said it to me as well. I can't remember who the ref was. But Yeah. So, yeah, learning all the time. But yes, you talk around different scenarios around, yeah, like if certain people go off in this scenario, a winger might come off and whatever, and contingency plans around back three being off and understanding that. But again, you can't really prep exactly for it
Yeah.
because you don't know the score in the game. You don't know if it's the first minute. You don't know if it's the last 10, but you can just have, discussions around it.
Yeah. And how do you cope with those? With what do you do to G the team up when things go wrong? Whose role is it to pull everybody together? And how do you actually get out of that hole that you could be in
You've
mentally?
leaders in the group. Yeah, so we'd have leaders in the group. We had a leadership group which probably was about 6 or 7 of us in it. And at any given time, you've probably got about 3 or 4 of you on the field. It's an emotional field. I was always very much trying to drive the emotional factor of the game plus the tactics. That's kind of my character. So I always look at a 10. Rob would have always said this to me, Gareth, you're a quarterback. The team should be an extension of you. And that kind of always resonated with me. So if you look at any team, I look at NFL, if you look at Tom Brady as an example, if you look at all the teams that he played for, the team would have been an extension of his character. He's quite driven. He was quite tactical. So if you look at the Patriots, what they were like whenever he was running that ship. If you look at Saracens as an example, when they were at their pomp and Owen Farrell was running around, they were a hard nosed, very team. You looked at that's what Owen is. Marcus Smith at Harlequins. What's his type of character he is? He's up, he's running around, he's bouncy. That's Harlequins. So I kind of wanted to be that tactician, sort of emotional driver, making sure everybody was on song, knowing that they were doing their role. Like if we could, almost playing in the right areas. That's kind of what I was. I wasn't a maverick. I wasn't a Finn Russell. I wasn't a player like that. So I'm not going to be that. So I think it's quite important for anyone who's playing in that position or 9 or 10 that you understand what you are as a team, and then knowing what the team around you can do. So, but then having individuals around you, to go back to what you're saying around that leadership, everyone buying into what we're trying to achieve is really important. And if you slightly go off task, and I could have went off task too, that you have people around you that can literally rein it back in very quickly. So one player, it's too much on one person, and it's having it in different areas. Like I don't know what's going on in the front row. So I can't go up and have a discussion with a referee who just, I think the loose head's born in. I don't even know what that means. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, there's no point in me having that conversation, but it's having the channels open to have that.
And I guess the word in that the word gets passed back, from the front to the middle to the back, so everybody knows where they're playing. What's next? You're obviously working with the women a bit more, which is great. You're back in Ireland. What's round the corner?
Good question. Yeah, so I've been involved with the women now for a year. It's kind of like, we'll see how that progresses now. Now the World Cup's over, we'll see what happens. I've really enjoyed being in around that space, but it's got me in with Irish rugby. It's got me in to see what's going on. Like, been involved with the High Performance Centre. I was very fortunate to be in around the men's Six Nations whenever that was happening as well. So just to see how they operate was really fascinating. But again, being involved in a Rugby World Cup and to see that and that progression, what can go forward from a women's point of view has been great. I've just got involved with the Schoolboy rugby over here now as well. So there's a school I'm working with leading up into, like I talked about, that school's cup. So that's going to be a nice piece to get in and see Schoolboy rugby, see what way that goes. I was involved with club rugby last year as well. And so the last 12 months has been really good. I've met a lot of people. I've went and met business people in around Northern Ireland as well. And just put myself out there, going and giving presentations around resilience and leadership, and just kind of a bit what my journey was, having to leave home and coming back. Ultimately, coming back was a very difficult decision to do, and to leave everything we knew. My wife as well, she's a GP partner, and she's had to come back over here, not reinvent herself, but kind of just get into a different way. It's just different, a different system. The kids have settled in really well. They're loving life. They love they're loving their schools, which is great. But for me, I'm still finding where I'm at. I'm enjoying in around the coaching area. I'm enjoying seeing the business world as well. I'm speaking to different people all the time and seeing old faces again. That's a lovely thing with Northern Ireland is if I pick up the phone to somebody within 2 phone calls, I could pretty much know somebody who knows that. It's just great. But yeah, getting back over to England as well, if the opportunities arise, like I'm very aware, like the standoff's still there. It's still the guys are running a great ship. And look, I love getting back and forth. I'm coming back again in a couple of weeks' time. I'm going over to see the X-Men, so that's going to be interesting to see that show. I don't know who's playing certain characters. Hopefully it's shedding a good light. And yeah, it's we'll see how it goes. Honestly, it's a nice space to be in.
Yeah, amazing. And it's interesting you talk about business, and you mentioned resilience and leadership, which I think we've touched on throughout our conversation, actually, because I think it builds into it so well with rugby, with sport, and you've talked about the standoff a little bit. Could you sum up what you think resilience and leadership are?
I think leadership is empowering people around you is the way I would look at. Again, if I give you an example of if I'm in the standoff in our bar in Exeter, and I walk into the door, right, what team have we got around us? So I'm not going to take the chef. I'm going to say to the chef, right, come you to the front of the house and you make sure everybody sits there. And then I'll say to the bar staff, right, you go and cook the food. That's putting the right people in the right area to do their job. I suppose if you're going into a rugby point of view, again, understanding that everyone has a role within the team, making sure, but I think good leadership is allowing people to be themselves. And if somebody needs an arm around their shoulder, or maybe a stick at times, it's kind of understanding the emotional energy that is in the room. I always noticed there was great examples where I knew that if I played with Nick White, that I could have as many arguments as I wanted with him on the field, but I would probably get the best out of him, and we would sit and have a beer after it. Whereas there's some other nines that I would know I have to put my arm around and make sure they're feeling good. And that's just probably an emotional detachment of understanding what your group needs at that very moment in time. And then from a resilience point of view, I think it's just being comfortable to be, having a bit of, I suppose my experience is like I've lost my father, cancer, being able to get back on, having hardship is okay if you can deal with it in the right areas. I probably went through, if I'm being perfectly honest, a very difficult time where mental health wasn't a thing at that time, where it was talked about the same. If I'd have known the things I knew, I might have spoke a bit more about it. Everyone deals with things differently. Just having that mindset that we can get up tomorrow and go, and it's okay that things don't go your way. Like I would even say to people now when I go out and practice goal kicking, as an example, when I work with my kickers, I always liked missing. I always felt it set me up for the real world, that I can deal with a mistake and get on with it. Whereas I do find now with some of them, we're looking for the perfect thing, the perfect kick. As an example, like somebody knocks the ball over the bar and they're turning to me and they're going, my foot was in this position, that position, whatever. And I says, yeah, but what was the outcome? Did it go over? Did it go where you needed it to go? Yes, move on. Don't dwell on something that isn't there, and don't look for something that isn't a thing. And I think being able to move on from mistakes is very, very important.
I think that's absolutely crucial, to be able to pick yourself up and get on and know that it'll be okay, and kind of ask yourself the question, what's next? And as you say, if the goal is being made, then sure, you can tweak and fine tune, but you've made it. There isn't anything perfect in my mind.
No, I think there's a great term they all say, practice makes perfect. I don't believe that for a second. I think practice breeds confidence.
I'm with you on that one. I'm with you. Steeno, thank you for your time. It's been a fascinating conversation. I always enjoy speaking to sportsmen such as yourself who've delivered at such a high level, who have then had to leave what they do and find that new path. And as you say, you're looking at coaching, you're not sure what's next, but there is something still to come. Can we just finish with your best advice to someone who is coming out of a career, be it sports or some other career, and looking for what's next? What advice would you give to those people?
I think being proactive is a big thing. Your platform, going into the bar after the game, speaking to people, speaking to corporate people. It's you have a platform which people want to talk to you, and that's not an easy thing to find when you step away from it. I'm noticing that massively since moving back to Northern Ireland, where I have to step out of my comfort zone a lot, where I have to go and almost explain who I am a little bit. Now, it's not, and I don't want this to sound in a bad way, but if I was still in Exeter, like, I could pick up the phone to certain individuals, probably easier. But that's the nice thing about what I'm doing. It's I have to be uncomfortable to do these things, because the outcome's going to be, and I've put myself in uncomfortable positions on a daily basis. And it's, you have a platform, and whether it's building profiles on LinkedIn, building whatever, using social media in the right direction. I'm still learning it. It's a useful tool, but it's being confident to do that and ask for help. There's no problem whatsoever. If I was in the middle of a rugby field, I would look to my teammates for help, because it's the right thing to do, because I can't do it all myself. And I think having conversations like this are great. Taking as much information on as you can, not being shadowed away to go, or stereotyped. I'll be honest, I probably felt a bit stereotyped when I came out of the game at Chiefs as a player. I went into coaching. It was brilliant because it kept me involved. It kept me in around the group that I was with. It's given me a platform to go and be at a Rugby World Cup. But it's being comfortable to go, okay, that I think it was the right time for me to leave when I did leave, because I needed to classic spread your wings, but see other things. And for me to evolve, it was the right time for me to go. And I think actually for the club, it was probably a good thing as well, because then you could look at other things, and, you're not holding on to what was something maybe years back. I don't know if that's right or wrong. Maybe that's just a feeling that I have. But yeah, to answer your question, be proactive and get out there, have conversations, meet people, you don't know who you're speaking to or what it could lead to down the line.
Perfect. I don't think I could ask for any better advice than that. So thank you. I hope everybody takes that on board, because it's absolutely key. Just, you said then about the right time to leave. That is actually a really vital thing for people to understand as well. Sometimes we outgrow where we are. And I think you see that in businesses, in careers as a whole. You get to a point where actually it's as good for the team, for the company, for you to leave and do something else as it is for you as an individual. So I think what you've said there is a really sound piece of advice for everybody. I want to fast forward a few months. Who's going to win the Six Nations this next year?
It's not even a debate.
I just thought I'd check, just in case you kind of had left field and said,
well, you talking about England. The men's one, or you talking about the women's one?
Oh, well, men's and women's.
I think with the men's one, I think when we get Keelan Dorse back fit, which hopefully he will be for the autumn internationals, look, it'll be interesting. I think, it's a very difficult thing to call at this stage. We're 6 months, are we even 6 months? I don't even know. I think we're more 6 months to the Women's World Cup.
Yes,
yeah. Women's Six Nations. I'm obviously going to say Ireland for the men's one, but I don't think it'll be as clear cut, and I don't think there'll be Grand Slams. From a women's point of view, I would love to see, it's still very hard to look past your world champions, but I would like to see Ireland potentially just in behind them, and leapfrogging the French.
Yeah, leapfrogging the French is always a good thing for anyone who isn't French. Steeno, thank you ever so much, mate. I really appreciate it. I appreciate your time. I appreciate everything you've done. And I wish you all the very best as you move forward, as you find your feet back home in Ulster. And here's to a very successful rest of your career. Thank you ever so much.
Thanks for having me, David.
Absolute pleasure.